Mark Thompson here on The Conversation. This is exciting because I get to talk to an honest-to-goodness Republican who has come over to the, now, Matt, have you come over to the dark side or you come over to the light from the dark side? This is, I didn't really think this through, but Matt Matter, it's a pleasure to have you here, and you're making a difference. I'll tell everybody about your organization. But first, tell me, do you feel as though you've walked into the light, Matt, from the darkness?
Well, I feel like I've been in the light, and trying to stay in the light is always a challenge in politics in any way, shape, or form. So that's really what I'm trying to do.
Well, you're the founder of Championing America, and you've come up with these inventive spots, and they speak to a lot of the issues associated with Trump, and they speak to them in these ways that you have to speak now, which is, when I say spots, I'm talking about commercials. They're hard-hitting, they're clever. You do a thing with a Mr. Rogers twist, where essentially, Fred Rogers-ish guy is sitting there watching his television as one thing after another that Trump has done, his administration has done. One horror that is perpetrated after another is played out before him. And the spot is, I don't want to pay it off, here as we in the conversation. It's worth a look, and we'll link to it. But tell me, is that the oomph that there is behind your organization? I mean, you're an entrepreneur, so you're a guy who's built this organization from scratch. Is it that? Is it messaging? I guess what is the organization as a whole?
Well, the organization is more centrist based, and I'm right of center, or have been historically. But I was kind of brought into the political domain by the outrageous behavior of President Trump, and I had been a Republican and never had voted for a Democrat for president my entire life. And so I ran against President Trump in 2020 in the primary to give Republicans a choice, to say, hey, this isn't the direction the Republican Party should be going, and we should make a change. Now, unfortunately, that didn't happen, but now I'm throwing my support behind Joe Biden, because I believe that Joe Biden is a centrist and would be a better choice for our country than Donald Trump.
So when you look at the GOP now, and if there's time, I can't wait to ask you all these questions about, so when you say you're a centrist, do you like this, or what do you accept this? And we'll get to all that. Everybody who's tuning in, us progressives, we love to fry our own, and you can only imagine the purity test that we'll put you through if there's time. But all kidding aside, when you look at the party now, I mean, what's left? What is it? I mean, tell me what the GOP is now.
Well, I think that it's become more and more the party of Trump, and all ideology is centered on what Trump says at any given moment, and he shifts the center of gravity in the party away from a fiscally responsible party to one of profligate spending. He shifts the party away from a long history of environmental concern over 50 years to one that rips down every environmental law that he could. So he shifts, a party that was pro-immigration to one that's virulently anti-immigration. So the party that I belong to, and millions of others have joined up into decades ago, has just shifted out from under us, because it's the party of Trump now. It's no longer the Republican Party.
I can't believe I'll say these words, but I'm going to, and that is, to be fair to Trump. I saw and you must have seen as well, the slide of this party over the last couple of decades, or did the party always seem as though it could find magnetic north? That seems to me that your party has drifted for a while now.
There's no doubt that there has been a change over time, and we've drifted from where George Herbert Walker Bush had said he wanted to be the environmental president back in 1988 to his son W, who certainly was not as virulently anti-environmental as Trump, but he certainly was following kind of more a Cheney-esque pattern of not really addressing global warming when we should have been addressing global warming back in the early 2000s. And unfortunately, that was a terrible move. And I think Cheney was probably pushing in that direction.
Certainly, that was an administration, that particular one to which you refer, that was ruled, I feel, in large measure, infiltrated, you might even say, by big oil and dirty energy. And so you were not going to have any breakthrough concepts, it didn't seem, at least in that sphere. But as you look at things now, do you see Biden as the path back to you jerking your party back into line, or shaking loose these Trumpies, and so you can get back to that side of the street? Or do you see in yourself almost a reconstituting of where you are politically?
Well, I think that I don't have my soul as part of the Republican Party. I mean, they don't own me, so they only got my vote because they stood for things that I thought were important. Back when President Reagan was virulently anti-communist and was confronting the Soviet Union and the totalitarian regimes around the world, I felt like that was our greatest threat, and that's why I was drawn to the party. I was also drawn to the party due to its free market views, and I thought that on balance, it had the better end of the equation. And unfortunately, over time, the Republican Party has shifted in ways that are not good for the party and not good for the country. So I would hope that it could shift back, and I quite frankly think that a more centrist Joe Biden will help that process of getting Republicans who are more centrist trying to grab those centrist votes. Versus, I personally think that a more left-wing Democratic Party brings on a guy like Trump. So I think that he feeds off of the fear of more progressive policies in part.
I see what you mean by that. I mean, I see, in other words, you can advertise those things that are sort of viewed as the most radioactive progressive policies, and maybe controversial is a better word than radioactive. But I mean, to certainly some on the right, you just even mention AOC, and it's enough to get the Geiger counter of panic going. And I can see, but one of the things I respect about progressives is that they share some of these ideals, and that they're upfront about it. But the notion, I also feel as though at our best on that side of the spectrum, we're ready to compromise. It seems as though the notion of compromise has left your party, the Republicans.
Well, that's why I started this super PAC, the championing America at her best, is to say we should be a country that looks at principles before personalities and looks for ideas. George Washington didn't want to have political parties. So I'm somebody who says, let's look at the idea versus the party. And I think that if we could do that more, we'd have a better political dialogue. And I think that back within recent memory, there was more cooperation between the parties. I mean, Newt Gingrich and Clinton compromised and did some good work in the 90s. We saw Tip O'Neill and President Reagan do some good work back in the 80s. So those things are possible, and we should work really hard to do that yet again.
It really seems as though we've come so far away from, as you suggest, those ideals that are American. The voter suppression alone, that was always, frankly, something that we dealt with, and I feel it was an embarrassment. The voter suppression, gerrymandering, both parties did it, but it's particularly egregious, I think, from the Republicans. But the open voter suppression now, that it's a naked voter suppression and essentially inviting foreign powers to also aid in an election. It seemed unthinkable to me, and yet it's all too real.
Well, it's certainly shocking that President Trump is inviting Russia and China to interfere in our election, and that is just absolutely beyond the pale. And that's why I, vociferously oppose him, because he is a threat to American democratic principles, and those are more important than party. And I'm calling on fellow Republicans and independents to vote for Joe Biden, because our democracy is more important than our party.
One of the things that I think is a particular positive with you is that you've I think anyway, sort of put together a coalition of like-minded people. People who might not have been on the same parade line 4 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever it might have been, and you put together money with it. Do you think that's the future of politics? Sort of the kind of coalition that you've now begun to put together as well, breaking from that falling in line kind of attitude that the right has often had?
Absolutely, I think that we do need to show that we're independent and that we don't just follow the party blindly, and they have to earn our votes. And I think that that's true of both sides. And I think that it's a healthy thing that there are a number of Democratic congressmen who are in centrist districts who have to listen to their voters. And that will help modulate the change and do it in a way that everybody can live with.
Well, Matt Mattern, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I'll tell you this also. You made 2 references, I think, at least early on, to the environment. And for that, I cherish guys like you who are in the GOP. I feel it's for me the issue, and the fact that you spontaneously mentioned it a few times speaks very well for your heart. And I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that you'll continue to come to the progressive camp. You'll realize, Matt Mattern, that you're on the right path with us. And I encourage everybody to check out Matt. We've got links to his spots, and you can also see his link on Twitter as well. So Matt, thanks for everything. Thanks for the conversation. We look forward to more from you.
Thanks for having me on the show, Mark. I greatly appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.